In the second video on integrated marketing communications, our focus is going to be on the budget and on the marketing mix. So let's continue talking about that. I'm sure you've always wondered how companies set their communications budget. And in any project that we've done in marketing, you always think about, so what's our budget? What's our limits? Right? And have you ever thought how you would set them? Like if you're a marketing manager, what would you do to figure out what's the right communications budget? It's going to vary. It's going to vary from a company to another, and it's going to vary based on methods they're going to use to define and set your budget. So, in this part of the chapter, we're going to talk about 4 common methods to establish your budget: the affordable method, percentage of sales method, competitive parity method, and the objective and task method. I'll go through these one by one, and if you have any questions about them after reading the book, please ask me in the discussion section. Let's start with the first one, the affordable method. The affordable method is about how much can you afford, or how much you think you can afford, which sounds like a great idea. If that's how much that I can afford, then I shouldn't be spending more, right? It makes sense. But it does have cons, guys. It does have a negative side. Think about it this way. If you just spend what you can afford, or based on how much money you have, you're ignoring the fact that marketing communications is an investment that will have an influence on future sales volume. So the more you spend, the more you might be able to make money as well. So keep that in mind, okay? The second one is going to be percentage of sales method. And with this one, you specify the percentage of your revenues to be spent on advertising. You can even do it per unit, like per sales price. Like 20 cents out of every $5 goes straight to advertising, which again, sounds like a good idea, but the problem is year to year sales change and thus your budget fluctuates. And if you're doing planning or forecasting your spending on advertising in 5 years, you wouldn't know because, again, sales are fluctuating. So keep that in mind. It also views sales as a determiner of communications rather than the result, right? So there are issues as well. And the third one is going to be competitive parity method. And again, that's based on the competition, obviously. The problem with this one is, why would you think that your competition know better? As in, why do you want to do exactly what they're doing or spend exactly how much they're spending? There's no evidence that says that their spending is enough and good and that's why I should copy them, right? So keep those disadvantages in mind. The fourth one is going to be objective and task method, and it has a separate slide. With the objective and task method, it's the most defensible approach. Okay? It calls upon you as a marketing manager to develop communications budgets by defining objectives, identifying tasks that you have to perform to achieve those objectives, to estimate the cost of performing them, right? And the sum of all these costs is going to be your communications budget. And you see the steps right here in front of you. This one, to me, again, it's always subjective, but to me, this is the best way to set your communications budget. If you still remember from the first video on integrated marketing communications, this is your communication mix: advertising, sales promotion, events and experiences, PR, online and social media marketing, mobile marketing, which includes social media marketing, direct and database marketing, and Salesforce. That's your mix. So mainly you have to spend your budget on a combination of these depending on your goals and objectives and so on and so forth. So let's go through these. Let's start with advertising. You know what it is. I'm not going to get into the details. But what's the good and the bad about it? Let's start with the good. It's pervasive. So it permits you as a marketer to repeat the message many times. It allows the buyer to receive and compare the messages from various competition, right? And it helps you get to a wide variety of targets and segments. Okay? The expressiveness is very helpful as well. With advertising, you can dramatize the company and the brand and be very expressive, artfully, sound, colors, anything you want to do to get your message. And most importantly, you have full control. You can choose the aspects of the brand and the product you want to focus on. You can choose the consumers. We call it micro-targeting. You can choose households and not others to blast them with ads and commercials, even if they're like in the same neighborhood. It's called micro-targeting, and you do it through, cable networks and things like that. So there are a lot of good things about advertising. What could be a bad thing about it? It's obvious, right? It's very expensive. Very expensive. So not all companies can afford it and don't have money in their budget for something like it, but it's an option. Sales promotion. Again, anything that's not the other seven counts as sales promotion. So discounts, rebates, lotteries, we've went through them. Okay, so you know these. Now, what's the good? It gets you attention. Obviously, it's a good incentive. So if we're thinking utilitarian perspective, it's given an incentive or rewarding the consumer behavior, which is also good. It's inviting, right? It includes kind of an invitation to engage in a transaction now. Actually, if you think of the IDA concept, which you've mentioned before, attention, interest, desire, action, that last step, that's action, as in to get the consumer to act, sales promotion and personal selling are the most effective components of the communications mix in that specific stage. Advertising is not going to push consumers into action. It's sales promotion that's going to make them do it. So keep that in mind. Your third option in the mix is going to be events and experiences. And you know them, like sponsoring events and things like that. And it has a lot of advantages, but I'm going to focus on one, the fact that they are engaging. Given they're live in real time, right? Those events and experiences are more actively engaging for consumers. And that's what you want to do. You want to engage your consumer, get them involved, get their attention. Those strategies, events and experiences help a lot. Public relations, and again, you know that's kind of the free advertising or publicity or press releases or things like that. We use it especially as part of crisis management. In situations where you know your image might be getting affected negatively because of something that you've done, because something that you've messed up, because of a product recall or anything along these lines, PR is what you do. It's usually higher on credibility. It sounds more sincere because it's a company talking straight to you and it's not trying to advertise or promote a product. No, they're just talking to you as a consumer. So it can reach hard to find buyers as well. And dramatization, guys, right? PR can tell the story behind your company, behind your brand, behind the product, and can do it in a sincere, honest way that'll make it look very credible to the consumer. Online and mobile, I'm going to combine them as one. We know them. Again, you use them daily as consumers. So when you put on your marketing manager hat, you should know how to deal with those. They're very interactive and they're very influential. They're very interactive because information can be changed or updated anytime you want to, real time. Right? So it's always up to date, it's always interactive, it's always rich, it's timely as in up to date as well. It's influential, right? It helps influence consumers as they're making a purchase decision on the spot. They might have their phone with them and they're looking at an app, or they might have their phone with them and browsing on the internet on their phone, and that'll help them make a decision in the store, in the aisle. So it's really good and has a lot of advantages. And the last two are direct and database marketing and personal selling. Database marketing, which I'm sure you've heard about it before, was the basis to the idea of customer relationship management, CRM, where you have a lot of information about the consumers, and thus, based on that info, you can customize the relationship with them, right? And we even took it a step further with the advancement of big data and more analysis of the consumers and better analysis of the consumers, and thus even a better relationship with them, and thus customizing your messages to make it even more relevant and trustworthy and noteworthy to them as well. So it's a very effective tool. Also, it's personal because, again, you're customizing your messages to them based on the info that you have about them. It's proactive, so a direct marketing piece can create attention, inform consumers, and include a call to action. And now you're being proactive. You don't have to react to what's happening. And last, it will complement your other marketing communications. So you can, through your e-commerce catalogs or actual hard copy catalogs that you can send the consumers way, you can give them more info that your other marketing communications did not offer. That way you're complementing the other things you're doing. So those are the advantages of them. With personal selling, the last option, that's personal selling. It's one of the best ways, especially if the product requires it. Now, if it's fast-moving consumer good, you don't need personal selling. But if it's a different type of products, like shopping products, like specialty goods, things like that, personal selling helps a lot, and it's very effective because you're there. You customize your message to fit the person in front of you. Okay, it's relationship oriented. You're building a one-to-one or one-on-one relationship with your consumer. You can read them and see what they're doing and how they're doing, and do they believe you or do they still not fully believe you or are not buying that message you're giving them. So you can read them, and it's response oriented. Okay, so the buyer is often given choices and encouraged to respond. So personal selling is very, very effective. How you choose your mix, other than the budget, other factors that will influence that are going to be things like the type of product I'm dealing with. And I mentioned that briefly when I was talking like about having salespeople or not having salespeople. The type of product is a big factor, right? So if it's a professional product or a product that's very expensive or it has some kind of financial risk, social risk, psychological risk, or it's a complicated or complex product, then advertising might not be enough. You need personal selling. You need a salesperson to be there to kind of help them or walk them through the process and make them feel at peace with the decision they're making and the fact that you're going to give them support and so on and so forth. So those are factors that we consider when figuring out what to use in our communications mix. Same thing with the type of product if it's B2B versus B2C. With B2B, we rarely use advertising, guys. It's mostly salespeople. It's professionals selling to professionals. That's what B2B is. So it's factors like these that we consider when we're figuring out our marketing mix. Other stuff are going to be related to the product life cycle stage. Like, is it at the intro stage? Is it at the growth? Is it at the maturity or is it at the decline, if you still remember those from the product strategy chapter? Obviously, when it's at the intro and at the growth stage, you need a lot of advertising, a lot of events and experiences, a lot of publicity because you're getting that exposure. And late towards the growth, you need more personal selling if the product fits, obviously, to gain distribution coverage. And then you'll need sales promotion and direct marketing, right, to help them try it. So keep that in mind. At the decline stage, on the other hand, you're going to minimize all of them. It's going to be probably mostly sales promotion because you want to get rid of the inventory that you have. So you discount, give freebies, and things like that just to get rid of whatever you have. So it's things like that that we consider from a product life cycle stage perspective. Buyer readiness stage is also another factor you have to consider. And this graph in front of you illustrates the cost effectiveness of three communication tools, right? Advertising and publicity, sales promotion, and personal selling based on the different stages of buyer readiness. Okay, and you can see advertising and publicity play the most important roles in the awareness building stage, right? When you're getting the exposure. For customer comprehension, it's primarily affected by advertising and personal selling. For customer conviction, it's mostly influenced by personal selling. Okay? Now, personal selling and sales promotion are mostly helpful at the closing of the sale. And I said that earlier, guys. Remember, for action, it's personal selling and sales promotion. That's what's going to get you to order. That's what's going to get you to act. Advertising is not going to help. And last, at the reordering, it's affected mostly by personal selling, sales promotion, and maybe some reminder advertising. Because you've done it before, you've already been convinced, you've already acted, so a reminder ad might be okay to help you do it again. So that's, again, just an idea on how Buyer readiness can be used as a factor when you're designing your communications mix. Once you've implemented your communications plan or a promotional plan, your job as a marketing manager is to measure the impact. Okay? So members of the target audience are asked whether they recognize or recall the messages, how many times have they seen it, what points in those messages do they remember, how they felt about it, what are the previous or current attitudes they have towards your product, towards your brand, towards your company, things like that, because you want to see whether effective, whether I just waste my money. Okay? And the figure in front of you gives an example of feedback measurement. So 80% of the consumers in the total market are aware of brand A, 60% have tried it, but only 20% who tried it are satisfied, right? So this tells you that the communications program was effective in creating awareness, but the product failed to meet consumer expectations, right? So that's a product strategy issue, not a promotion strategy at this point. On the other hand, with brand B, 40% of consumers are aware of it, 30% have tried it, but 80% of them are satisfied. So in this case, you need to work on your promotional strategy, strengthen it to take advantage of that huge satisfaction. So in this case, the problem is with the P4 promotion and not with the P4 product. And that's the idea behind it. You measure your results to see where did you go wrong. Last thing we're going to talk about in this chapter before we wrap up is the fact that we call it integrated marketing communications for a reason. Integrated marketing communications is called integrated and not just marketing communications. Is like I said earlier, I think in the earlier video, it's because you want all your promotional activities, all your communications mix activities working in parallel with combined effort leading to the same goal, to the same vision, to the same objective, to the same mission. Okay, that's why it has to be integrated. They have to complement each other and move in the same direction. Otherwise, you'll distract your consumer. And getting that in line is not easy. That's why you have to manage your IMC all the time. Those 6 criteria you see in front of you will help you determine whether your communications are truly integrated and you're coordinating your media and implementing your IMC plan properly. Okay? So coverage, contribution, commonality, complementarity, conformability, and cost, those are your 6 criteria. Okay? Coverage is about the proportion of the audience reached by your communications. Contribution is an inherent ability of marketing communications to create a desired response and a communications effect from consumers in the absence of exposure to any other communication option. Okay? Commonality is the extent to which common associations are reinforced across communications options. Okay? So as in, to what extent are your different communication options sharing the same meaning? Okay? Do they have some meanings in common? Complementarity relates to the extent to which different associations and linkages are emphasized across communication options. Okay? Because again, keep in mind, different communication options are more effective when used in tandem, and complementarity is about that. Conformability mainly is about the extent to which a marketing communication option works for a group of consumers that are familiar with the message or your messages in general compared to other consumer groups that might not be that familiar with it. Okay? And the last one is going to be cost, and that's about cost compared to effectiveness and efficiency of a specific marketing mix option or marketing communication option. We know that different marketing communication options might have different efficiency, different effectiveness, depending on the product, on the market, on the consumer. So advertising isn't always the best, for example. And advertising is the most expensive. So you have to look at the cost of it and its effectiveness in your area and efficiency in your area, in your industry, and then plan accordingly. Okay? And that wraps up our chapter. Meet me in the discussion section and we'll continue the discussion on IMC. Thank you for listening.